The noon train shrieked as it slowed, iron wheels grinding against steel, steam hissing into the dry summer air. Eliza Harper stood before the open carriage door with gloved hands clasped tightly around the handle of her small valise. For a brief, foolish second, she searched the platform for a familiar face, though she had never actually seen the man who was meant to greet her. Dry Creek Station was little more than a wooden platform, a narrow awning, and a faded sign creaking in the wind. Beyond it stretched hard-packed earth, a water trough, and a handful of buildings squinting beneath the wide western sky. She stepped down carefully, her black widow's dress brushing the platform boards. The conductor handed down her trunk and offered a polite nod. "Ma'am," he said gently, as if he already sensed what she did not yet want to admit. "Thank you," she replied, smoothing her skirt. The train lingered only minutes before releasing another loud whistle. Passengers dispersed quickly, greeted by embraces, handshakes, or familiar laughter. A young couple reunited near the steps, arms wrapped tight. A ranch hand slapped his brother's back. Even a small boy darted forward into his father's waiting arms. Eliza remained where she stood. She had memorized the description from Walter Briggs' letters. Tall, brown hair, slight limp from an old cattle injury. A widower with 2 young sons in need of a steady woman's presence. His words had been thoughtful, practical. He had written of partnership rather than romance, of shared burdens rather than passion. After 3 lonely winters since burying her husband, that had felt like enough. The platform began to empty. A breeze tugged at the black veil pinned neatly to her hat. She scanned the faces one more time. A tall man approached, but he walked past her. Another adjusted his coat and disappeared toward the stables. Her chest tightened. Perhaps he was delayed. Perhaps his horse had thrown a shoe. Perhaps. The conductor gave her a final apologetic glance before climbing aboard. The train released a long, echoing whistle and began to move. Steam curled around her boots as the cars rolled past, faster and faster, until there was nothing left but dust and the distant hum of metal fading into horizon. Silence settled. Not complete silence. Dry Creek was too alive for that, but the particular silence that follows expectation unmet. 2 women near the water pump glanced her way, then leaned closer to each other. Their whispers carried just enough to sting without forming words. A stable boy pretended to adjust a saddle strap while staring openly. Eliza straightened her spine. She would not fidget, would not pace, would not look abandoned. She walked to the bench beneath the awning and set her valise beside her trunk. The wood creaked under her weight as she sat, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Minutes passed. The sun climbed higher, warm against the back of her neck. She told herself she would wait 15 minutes more. No, 30. Travel from a ranch could be unpredictable. But as the clock above the station door ticked forward, the reality pressed harder against her ribs. He wasn't coming. Humiliation burned far hotter than grief ever had. Grief had been private, wrapped in black crepe and quiet condolences. This was public. She had crossed 2 states on the promise of a letter. And now she was a spectacle in widow's black, sitting alone on a platform where everyone else had been claimed. Her fingers tightened in her gloves. If she cried, they would see. If she ran, they would talk. So she remained still, chin lifted, eyes fixed on the horizon as though she were merely waiting for something of her own choosing. The wind rose again, lifting dust across the boards. And in the distance, faint at first but growing louder, came the unmistakable rhythm of approaching hoofbeats. The hoofbeats grew louder, cutting through the murmur of the town like a drum announcing something inevitable. Eliza felt them before she fully heard them, felt the vibration through the soles of her boots where they rested against the wooden platform. Dust appeared first, rising in a golden plume along the road that led into Dry Creek. Then the rider emerged through it, a dark silhouette against the bright afternoon sun. He rode hard, leaning low over the horse's neck, reins steady in his hands. The animal's muscles moved in powerful rhythm, hooves striking the ground with urgency rather than leisure. The few townsfolk lingering near the station turned to look. Whispers paused mid-sentence. The rider slowed only when he reached the edge of the platform. He pulled back on the reins, and the horse responded immediately, sliding to a controlled stop. Dust swirled around them both. For a moment, horse and rider seemed carved from the same stubborn piece of prairie. He swung down in one smooth motion. His boots hit the dirt with a firm thud, and he removed his hat almost at once, revealing dark hair damp with sweat from the ride. His eyes found her quickly. Not scanning the platform, not searching beyond her. "You the lady from the noon train?" he asked, voice low but clear. Eliza rose from the bench, smoothing her gloves out of habit. Yes, she answered carefully. I was expecting someone. His gaze shifted briefly toward the empty tracks, then back to her. There was something in his expression, regret, perhaps, though it did not seem to belong to him personally. Name of Walter Briggs? He asked. Her pulse skipped. Yes. He nodded once, jaw tightening slightly. Figured as much. The pause that followed was heavy, but not cruel. He did not rush to fill it with excuses. He did not offer false cheer. Briggs ain't coming today, he said at last. The words landed bluntly, but there was no mockery in them. Eliza felt her fingers curl into her palms. I gathered as much. His eyes flickered with something like respect at her composure. His sister took sick before dawn. Bad fever. He rode out to fetch a doctor from Ridgeway. Left word at the post office for you, but it didn't reach the station in time. She searched his face for signs of fabrication, for that subtle shift people make when telling a polite lie. She found none. So, he meant to come, she said quietly, hating how fragile the question sounded. He did, the cowboy replied without hesitation. Left before first light, from what I hear. Was cussing the timing something fierce. The knot in her chest loosened, just enough to allow breath. Relief and embarrassment tangled together inside her. She had prepared herself for abandonment. Instead, she was left with something almost worse, a misunderstanding witnessed by half the town. I see, she managed. He stepped a little closer, though still leaving a respectful distance between them. Name's Cole Turner, he offered. Briggs is my neighbor. I was riding fence when I heard about the mix-up. And you came to tell me? She asked. His gaze flicked toward the women at the pump, then the stable boy pretending not to stare. His mouth set in a firm line. No lady should be left standing alone on a platform like that, he said evenly. There was no grand gesture in his tone. No flourish, just simple conviction. For the first time since the train had disappeared, Eliza felt the sharp edge of humiliation dull slightly. The dust settled slowly around them, the horse snorting softly behind him. Cole Turner replaced his hat and gave her a small nod. If you'll allow it, ma'am, I'd like to see you somewhere more comfortable than this bench while Briggs sorts out his family trouble. The prairie wind lifted the edge of her veil again, and this time, when it brushed against her cheek, it did not feel quite so cold. Cole did not rush her answer. He simply stood there, one hand resting lightly on the reins, the other holding his hat against his thigh. The town watched with poorly disguised curiosity, but he seemed unaware of it, or unwilling to acknowledge it. Eliza glanced once more down the empty tracks before nodding. Thank you, Mr. Turner. I would appreciate that. A faint smile touched his mouth, not triumphant, not familiar, just warm. Cole's fine. He moved toward her trunk without fanfare. Though he was clearly strong enough to lift it easily, he paused and looked back at her first. May I? The simple courtesy surprised her more than the offer of help itself. Yes, she said softly. He lifted the trunk with steady ease and carried it toward his horse. Rather than hoisting it carelessly, he secured it with careful knots, checking the straps twice before stepping back. Every movement was deliberate, practical. There's a boarding house in town, he said, adjusting the saddle strap. But it's crowded this week with cattle buyers. My place is quieter. My sister's there, visiting while her husband's on drive. You'd have a proper room. Eliza studied him closely. His face bore the marks of sun and work, faint lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he squinted often into bright horizons. He did not look like a man who made reckless offers. You're certain it wouldn't be an inconvenience? She asked. Ma'am, he replied, meeting her gaze directly, it'd trouble me more to leave you here. The sincerity in his tone left little room for argument. He helped her mount the small wagon tied behind his horse, offering his hand without gripping too tightly. His palm was rough, calloused from reins and rope, yet his hold was steady and careful as he guided her up. Once she was seated, he stepped back immediately, giving her space. They set off at an easy pace, leaving the station and its whispering spectators behind. The road stretched wide and dusty ahead of them, bordered by open prairie that seemed to roll endlessly beneath the vast sky. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting the land in warm amber light. For a while, neither spoke. The quiet was not heavy the way the platform silence had been. It felt unforced. Briggs is a decent man, Cole said at last, eyes forward as he rode alongside the wagon. Lost his wife 3 years back. Been managing on grid alone since. Eliza nodded. I lost my husband to fever. I'm sorry, he said simply. There was no pity in it. Just acknowledgement. She appreciated that. They rode past grazing cattle and low fencing, the air scented faintly with dry grass and earth. A hawk circled overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a creek glimmered under the fading sun. When they reached his ranch, it was modest but well kept, a sturdy house with a wraparound porch, a red barn standing solid behind it. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. Cole stopped the wagon and moved quickly to help her down again. His hand steadied her waist briefly before releasing as soon as her boots touched the ground. "My sister, Clara, will be pleased to have company," he said. "She's got a soft heart for travelers." Eliza looked at the house, then back at him. The day had begun with hope, collapsed into humiliation, and now stood at something quieter, unexpected kindness. As twilight deepened and crickets began their evening chorus, she realized something that unsettled her in the gentlest way. Walter Briggs had written letters full of promises. But Cole Turner had ridden hard beneath the sun simply to ensure she would not stand alone. And sometimes, she thought as he carried her trunk toward the porch, action spoke far louder than ink on paper.